nice to have you here. Today I'm talking about a topic that is very important to me personally, namely electrosmog. I've already made a very detailed video about it, but I still feel the need to talk about it once again, especially because it's becoming more and more prevalent. It affects us all and we can't avoid it. And if I can't avoid something that could harm me, then it makes sense for me to find a solution to minimize these potentially harmful effects as much as possible. That's why I want to briefly summarize in this video what is meant by electrosmog, what is the current scientific status of the risks, and above all, what you can do to prevent it from becoming a problem for you. Before we start, I would ask you, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and give me a thumbs up if you like the videos. The channel is mainly about the frequency application with the diamond shield zapper, and you will also find several links on the topic under the video in the description, as well as other channels where you can find us, and affiliate links with 5% for your orders and your support for me and my work. Thank you very much for that. But let's get started, and first of all, what does electrosmog actually mean? The term is made up of electro and smog, while smog stands for environmental pollution caused by harmful substances. Electrosmog describes the environmental pollution caused by electric, magnetic and electromagnetic fields emitted by technical devices and power cables. These fields are invisible and all around us. As explained in detail in the first video, a distinction is made between two different types of radiation, low frequency and high frequency. With low frequency radiation coming from power lines, sockets, lamps, switches and cables, and high frequency radiation comes from cell phones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, microwaves, antennas, 4G, 5G, baby monitors, and so on. Many devices work with high-frequency voltages. The fusion of electric and magnetic fields creates radiation, which is then referred to as electromagnetic radiation. And these high-frequency electromagnetic fields break away from the source and radiate in all directions. This effect is specifically used in antennas. That is why we are almost always exposed to this radiation. This is the starting point, and it leads to discussions among experts, but also in society. And the subject of discussion are two completely opposing views on high-frequency radiation or electrosmog. Most international boards consider the current limit values to be sufficient, as there is no clear evidence to date of acute or chronic health problems when these limits are adhered to. The assumption is based on the fact that high-frequency electromagnetic fields primarily heat tissue, which, according to studies, does not lead to damage to health if the limit values are adhered to. However, critics such as the Bio-Initiative Working Group point to possible biological effects even at low exposure levels, including changes in the blood count, DNA damage, and increased cancer risks. And the EMF portal also contains numerous studies on this. In short, there is currently no definitive evidence to my knowledge that clearly indicates health risks from electrosmog, but the scientific debate remains active and precautionary measures continue to be recommended by official bodies, especially for prolonged or intense exposure and low exposure levels. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed for myself for a long time that when I'm traveling longer distances in the car and also with several people, this means that there are also several cell phones on the spark, plus the technology in the car, and all of this nicely locked up in this car chassis, so that I always get out completely exhausted and sometimes with a slight headache. I also feel a similar effect when I sit in front of my laptop for a longer time and maybe have my cell phone next to it. With certain brands, I get a slight racing heart if the laptop is too close to me, which makes me extremely restless and unable to concentrate. If you have children and they have been at school for a while, see how they feel when they come home after a day at school. Do they still have the energy that children should have? I know of several cases from friends where children are often totally exhausted when they get home due to the increase in technology in school classes and the growing consumption of media via mobile devices. Many find it very difficult to concentrate and many have regular headaches. I'm not suggesting that electrosmog is the only cause of such complaints, but I simply want to sensitize you to take a closer look and perhaps talk to your children about how they feel after prolonged cell phone use or after a day at school with a tablet and whether they notice a change by themselves. People affected by electrosensitivity also complain of sleep disorders, chronic tiredness, malaise, loss of memories, increased susceptibility to stress and even fertility problems, increased susceptibility to infections, changes in blood count, anxiety, irritability, and heart problems have also been observed. And perhaps you would like to leave me a comment as to whether you also notice a difference if you spend more time on your cell phone, computer, etc. on some days than usual, or whether you find it harder to fall asleep or sleep through the night if you have your cell phone by your bed or spend a long time watching TV in the evening. That would really interest me. But what are the actual reasons for taking precautionary measures against electrosmog if it has not been proven that it is harmful at all? On the one hand, the precautionary principle. As long-term effects and possible risks, especially in the case of very intensive or permanent exposure, which applies to most of us and our children, have not yet been conclusively researched, some experts recommend keeping exposure as low as possible as a precautionary measure. Then there is also individual sensitivity. Some people report complaints that they attribute to electrosmog. Even if a direct connection has not been scientifically proven, those persons take these symptoms seriously because they suffer from them. Another reason for precautionary measures is the unclear study situation. There are individual studies that have found indications of possible negative effects, even if those studies are considered uncertain. Some research suggests possible biological effects, such as changes in cell metabolism, DNA damage, or sleep disorders, especially with prolonged and intensive exposure. Research is simply not yet completed at this point, and technical developments, the constant increase and spread of new technologies are also giving rise to new questions that have not yet been conclusively assessed. The use of 6G is expected by 2030 and it is currently in full development. The question now is, what can you do to protect yourself as much as possible from the potentially harmful effects of electrosmog without panicking? The fact is that we cannot completely protect ourselves from electrosmog in our everyday lives. So here are a few tips that you can implement for yourself and your children at low cost. It may take a new routine, but for me this is part of my self-care. I've simply noticed that the quality of my sleep has improved significantly, which naturally makes me feel much better during the day and I'm more productive. I'm also not as exhausted afterwards as I already was. So, for the bedroom, it is recommended not to use electronic devices at night. This means avoiding power cables and Wi-Fi in the bedroom and switching off routers at night. Also avoid things like radio and clock radio, cell phones, water beds, anything that is powered by wire or wireless. The easiest way is to go to the fuse box and switch off the power. And what else you can add in terms of wellness, earth yourself at night with an earthing sheet or the diamond shield zapper. Then you may experience a completely new and refreshing feeling the next morning. The night is the time when the body regenerates, important processes take place that should not be disturbed, and therefore give yourself and your body these 7 to 8 hours of well-being and wellness. It will be grateful. It is generally recommended to only use electrical devices when necessary. Disconnect chargers from the power supply after charging. Wi-Fi and especially Bluetooth only when necessary. Wire this better. You could at least implement this on the computer and set devices to low radiation levels. Keep cell phones or DECT phones as far away from seats as possible. A greater distance reduces radiation exposure considerably. If you can, keep your distance from mobile phone masts. I think I would move out if my neighbor had one of these built on his roof. Then you can also ask yourself whether you really need a microwave. It's not really good for your food. Then there are the more expensive measures, such as installing mains isolators, There are also special cables or shielding materials which are helpful for very sensitive people, but they are not inexpensive. It might also be interesting to borrow or buy an Electrosmog tester to accurately measure the radiation levels in your home. Such devices cost between several hundred and several thousand euros, depending on the model. This would allow you to plan more targeted measures, and if you are very concerned about the issue or have major health problems, it can also be helpful to seek advice from a specialist. Something else you can easily observe and implement yourself is, for example, not to place laptops, tablets, or other electrical devices on your lap. Charge devices as far away as possible from your living area and ideally unplug them after charging, as charging generates high EMFs near the cable. In my opinion, children should not use their cell phones in bed at night, at least if they are still at an age where parents can enforce this. In general, it would be good to sensitize younger children to the issue. It certainly makes sense to do this before handing them their first cell phone. Regular earthing also helps the body to minimize low-frequency electrical radiation, which you can also achieve with the Diamond Shield Zapper by connecting to the device every day. You don't have to put the device on for this. You can also achieve the same effect by walking barefoot through the meadow, preferably through damp grass. And what I would also like to mention, because I have already had some experience of this, there are many different suppliers who sell their products to attenuate high-frequency radiation, including devices, plugs, pendants, stickers to stick on or geometric figures, and so on. These are based on different approaches. Some are based on physics, while others use magnetic fields, energy, or even bioresonance. Unfortunately, the whole thing is quite confusing, and if you are interested in buying something like this, you should first find out what suits you best. I have already tested several different products, and I have to say that not all of them deliver what they promise, even the more expensive ones. I often had the feeling that it helped well at first, but after a while I couldn't feel any difference. Maybe it was just a placebo effect, or maybe the e-blockers lose their effect over time, who knows. But what I have been using for at least 2 years now are e-blockers that work based on bioresonance. The producer does not promise that radiation will be completely blocked, but that the electromagnetic radiation will be weakened in its effect by reducing the frequency peaks. In other words, the Wi-Fi frequencies are not eliminated but diffused so that the body has relief. And for me personally, this is still noticeable even after 2 years. Every time I forgot to put my necklace on, I felt pretty exhausted. I only realized this when I stood in the bathroom in the evening and saw my necklace lying there. For me, this is currently the only product that works really well. I also have it in my car and in my apartment. If you're interested in that, you can find the link below the video so you can check it out for yourself. Well, I hope I was able to explain the topic in a way that was understandable. If you need more facts, I recommend you watch my detailed e-smog video. I'll link it in the video description, and I'd be pleased if you tell me what is your opinion on the subject. So now I wish you a really good time and see you soon.